I'm Maureen Ballatori, and this is Spilled Salt, a podcast on the thrills and spills from the food, beverage, and agriculture industries. Today's guest is Monica Watrous. She's the managing editor of NOSH, which is part of the BevNet family. For more than a decade, Monica has covered the latest trends, innovations, and developments in the food and beverage industry and has organized and hosted multiple events featuring emerging brands and cutting-edge concepts. She's a lifelong foodie. We talk about that today, right down to her Instagram, which is What's Monica Eating, which I love. Not only do we focus on a bit of Monica's background, what led her to become the managing editor of NOSH, but also some advice for folks who are looking to get the media's attention. Enjoy the conversation. Hey, Monica, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you. So I always like to start these off with a little bit of background. Can you talk us through your career history leading up to the work that you're doing now at NOSH?
Sure. So I have a degree in journalism. I started out at newspapers following college, and then the past 11 years, I sort of entered the CPG fray as managing editor at Food Business News, which is a trade publication. And from there, most recently, as you alluded to, I joined the NOSH team as managing editor about 5 months ago. But I cut my teeth on CPG journalism at Food Business News and really fell in love with the emerging brands and early stage startup space. So I would say that's sort of where I've my beat or my area of interest over the past few years.
Yeah. And what do you love about that? What about the emerging brands is intriguing to you?
I think it's the innovation. There's a lot of really interesting problem solving happening and a lot of passion. Any entrepreneurs that I've ever spoken with are just so inspiring. The way that they just approach their startups, taking out second mortgages or just putting everything on the line to pursue that dream and that vision is super inspiring to me.
I think the more I continue to work in this industry as well, I think that when you find a CPG founder who's all in, like it really is. I think inspiring is one of the many words that you can use for that, because you have to be, right? You have to be all in order to get through the constant blows that tend to hit you in CPG, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty unforgiving business. And it does take a lot of grit and determination and resilience, qualities that sometimes I don't think I quite possess. So if there's any way that I can help elevate these people in what they're doing, I'm happy to do my small part on the sidelines.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about where your initial interest in journalism started. Like, is it always been something that you were interested in, or did it develop like when you were in college, or, finding sort of what you thought you might want to do with your career? Where'd that initial interest start?
I always really enjoyed writing and telling stories, but it didn't really take shape as journalism until my junior and senior year of high school. I was on the high school newspaper staff, and I realized, oh, this is a viable career path. I should try this out. And then I went to the University of Missouri Journalism School. And at that time, there was a real crossroads in what the media landscape was going to look like. A lot of blogging and Is that
It's okay?
okay?
For anybody who didn't hear that, we can hear her dog barking in the background a little bit. Just it's fine. Unless it's distracting to you.
No. It's their
Okay.
lunchtime, so they're making a fuss. No, but we were at this crossroads where the internet and blogging and the way that people acquired news was changing. And so a lot of my professors at the time were saying things like, well, it's up to you, your generation to rewrite the next chapter of journalism. And when I started my 4-year stint at the Kansas City Star, that was sort of the beginning of the end of the heyday of traditional journalism. I witnessed 9 rounds of layoffs in the 4 years I was there until the last one took me with it. So it's it's really tough. But then I found business to business journalism, which I mean, one of the things that we talk about in this industry is that food is such a resilient, recession proof industry. Everybody's going to keep eating.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit more of a safety net there, but then also just this business to business side of things where you're speaking to the industry and the trade. It wasn't it wasn't how I was educated or I guess classically trained, but I really enjoyed this type of work more so than the traditional newspaper work I was doing before.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny that you mention that from the B2B journalism perspective, that food was safer, but we also just talked about like the grit and the tenacity that it takes emerging food brands and beverage brands to like be able to stick around, because really it's not, from that perspective, it could be perceived to be not safe, right? Because there's so much risk in starting and scaling a CPG.
Right. And especially now there's just so much competition because the barriers to entry have been lowered in the last decade. And so many brands coming to market, and it's just a very expensive and cost intensive business. And capital is harder to come by. When people were starting their businesses 10 years ago in this space, it was a very different story. And now we've seen a lot of startups having to shutter in the past 9-12 months, which is really sad to see it, because I mean, there's some really great brands that are just no longer able to continue due to the market and the current environment.
Yeah. Whether that's lack of access to capital or changing. I know there were tons of change in supply chain since COVID, right? Like that took a lot of people out too.
Oh yeah.
I feel like you can really tell when people love their work and they have a passion that just permeates everything that they do. And you have that. And I could tell from when I was doing my research in advance of today's show too, because your personal Instagram is What's Monica Eating. And I love that. I love that so much. So what are, like, when you are sort of strolling the center aisle of the grocery store or you're walking expo, like what are some of the things that you're excited to see from emerging brands in food and bev?
I think anything that is new to me. So when I go to Sprouts, for example, you see a lot of Sprouts on my Instagram. That's probably my favorite retailer. They have that innovation set in the middle of the store where they have a quarterly rotation of new brands that they bring in. And it's such a great place for discovery. And I think that's what I really am drawn to, is that opportunity to discover something that I hadn't seen before. I mean, I think what really draws me into Expo West is not another like kombucha or another adaptogenic soda or prebiotic soda or, grain-free granola. There's so many, I don't want to say Me Too products out there, because I think a lot of people come to market with the same idea. I don't think they're copying each other deliberately. I think that there's just a lot of people with the same great idea coming to market at the same time. Like you see in Hollywood, a lot of movies that are made around the same subjects that come out at the same time.
Yeah. And not to like derail this too much, but to your point about access to resources too, the barrier to entry became, lower. And so once it was possible to do something, other people discovered that possibility as well. And I think that has an impact too on like what comes to market at what time.
Absolutely. And a lot of the, a lot of products and brands that come to market are responding to current trends. So with Ozempic being a really big topic of conversation and, having such an influence on the way that a growing portion of the population is eating, I think we'll see more brands coming to market with products that are tailored towards, what to eat if you're taking that medication. We're already seeing, I mean, just yesterday, Nestle, or 2 days ago, Nestle announced that it was working on a product line as a GLP-1 companion, and it would, I don't know a whole lot about the product, but I'm guessing it has a lot of protein and fiber, which are, just key nutrients that people who are restricting their calories are going to need. We hear a lot of users of that drug who are losing muscle mass because they're maybe not eating as much protein or having digestive issues. And so I expect to see more brands coming forward with products that sort of answer the call for people who are either using those types of medications or are looking for a more accessible and affordable alternative to those medications. So
Mm-hmm.
products that are positioned as GLP-1 alternatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so interesting. I feel like it's one of those. Ozempic came, and then, the whole flurry of GLP-1s came on the market what is seemingly so fast,
Mhm.
right? That it was like here and then it was everywhere. And it's so interesting that you're making that connection with emerging brands of food that are answering the call for what people are still looking to add to their diet when they're taking medications like that, because seemingly they seem a bit unrelated in some ways, right? Like, I get it, it's a food, product in the grand scheme of things, right? It's related to food in some ways, but that's a very innovative idea in terms of launching something that is specifically targeted at that market.
Right. But we're seeing, I mean, there was an interest in brain health that emerged a couple years ago, and we started seeing products that were tailored more towards supporting brain health and cognitive function.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a lot of interest around digestive health as we're learning more about the microbiome. And so brands are
Right.
coming to market positioned around this idea of delivering products that have, prebiotic fiber or postbiotics. So I think that that's part of it and why we see a lot of similar products coming to market at the same time as we were discussing earlier, because they're responding to these trends in real time and able to turn something around very
Mm-hmm.
quickly because of all of the resources available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Excellent point. I want to take a sharp left turn here, for leveraging some of your expertise for emerging brands that can, listen to this and get some thoughts on ways to approach the media to get their story out there. What are some ways that emerging brands or startups can get coverage? Like, what's a good way to sort of pitch the media to get a good result?
Sure. Well, so it feels like a shameless plug, but NOSH does have a new self-service PR platform or portal that people can use to upload their own press releases. But also we have a tip line, news@nosh.com. So if there's something that you want to get in front of our team of editors and reporters, certainly email it to news@nosh.com. As far as getting the attention of a reporter, I mean, we receive a lot of pitches every day, and it's sometimes hard to stand out. I think being succinct and compelling, finding that angle that's going to stand out, providing assets like a media
Mm,
kit with images of your product. Um, y- you know, uh, there are those are some of the things that stand out to me like off the bat, just because I feel like it's easier. Just make it easy for the
yeah,
reporter or the
exactly.
editor to not only understand what the product or brand is, but you know that they can turn around and use it and not keep like having to follow up and ask for more things.
Mm-hmm.
I would say understand the publication that you're pitching to.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a waste of your time and the editor or reporter's time if you are pitching your personal care product to a food publication,
Right.
even if it includes like a food ingredient. Like still we don't write about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. And then I would also say to be courteous and judicious on the follow up. Like, just to understand that editors are inundated with a lot of content, and just to understand that it may take a little while to hear back from somebody.
Right. Yeah. So in the early days, I was always taught that the relationship with your sort of go-to media partners is one of the critical ways to get, the right kind of coverage for the right kinds of, products or services or whatever it is. So you had mentioned like media kit with images, make it easy, know the audience, the follow-up is critical, all of those things. From your perspective, how important is the relationship?
Oh, really important. I mean, and I think, I'm in a unique position where, versus when I was in traditional newspaper journalism, I feel like I've sort of become, in addition to reporting on this industry, in a way, a champion or an advocate for the brands and the founders that I write about. And it almost feels like a conflict of interest at times, because I support these folks and I want them to win, and I'm buying their products and I'm posting about it on Instagram, but I'm also out here, doing my job, most importantly, to deliver the most fair, accurate, and
Mm-hmm.
objective news. But I would say that, I think that it's helpful to have that relationship to keep building and again, understanding what the media outlet is looking for. If,
Mm-hmm.
if they're writing a lot about new products or distribution gains or acquisitions, things that that they're going to cover,
Right.
understand that that's important and reach
Yeah.
out.
Right. Right. Yeah. Don't, like you said, don't pitch your personal care product to the food publication.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's great to be able to do follow-on stories, right? When you can write about something that just came on the market and then 5 years later be able to also follow up with an acquisition must be such a beautiful thing for you to be able to do.
Yeah, well, it's fun to watch the journey that a lot of these brands are on, and you could go on LinkedIn at any given time and see a lot of these milestones being posted, but to be able to know a brand when it started and then to see it just like now we're in Whole Foods National, and now
Right.
we just got an injection of capital, and we're going to do this and that. That's just, yeah, it is fun to feel like you're on the journey with them. And there's just a lot more transparency, I think, too. When
Mm-hmm.
you asked me about why I like these sort of younger or earlier stage brands, I think part of it is because they're out here building in public and bringing
I
people along
just
for the
wrote
ride.
that literal
Yeah.
statement down, building in public, because you mentioned LinkedIn. Yeah.
Hmm.
Talk more about that. What are your thoughts on that whole trend that's sort of emerging of this group of brands and that are doing that?
I mean, I love it. I think that it's helpful for other founders to see some of the struggles and challenges that fellow founders are facing. And it sort of humanizes the business in a way that makes you want to support it. And
Yeah.
I think, like, even just like average consumers who don't have the kinds of visibility into the CPG world that we have, if they are watching their Instagram or TikTok and they see, like, oh, that's what it looks like when they just had a big production run and that's what it looks
Hmm.
like, how
Right.
cool. Or like,
Yeah.
oh, this person is, I don't know, it's just, I think it's refreshing. I think that transparency is huge for consumer loyalty and brand building.
Yeah.
And even to see like an email from a founder that says, oops, we are delayed on this order that you ordered because our flow wrapper machine isn't working and we've had all these challenges and we want to let you know exactly what's happening and this is why your order will be late.
Hmm.
That makes me more, it endears me to that founder and that brand even more, to know that they are open about what's going on. And it just,
Right.
yeah, I just think it just earns more loyalty.
Yeah. Totally agree. And it's interesting too, going back to, you had mentioned when you were in college and then there was a big shift going into blogging. Who would have thought that social media would come up as a media outlet in the way that it has? And so it's really, I'm curious what your thoughts are about the content that you push out at NOSH and like how you balance that with the constant flow of information that's coming from social media platforms. Like, how do you prioritize getting that content out as quickly as it can, right, when it's coming from so many different channels all at once? What's your thought on that?
As far as how we approach what we're writing about and how we're getting, I mean, and it does make it interesting from a reporter's perspective, that we are seeing a lot of these stories breaking by my dogs again. Breaking by the founders or the companies on their respective social media pages. And for us, because we have these relationships that you talked about, that's also important to be able to just pick up the phone and be able to text the founder of a company
Mhm.
and say, hey, I saw you post about you're selling your brand, tell me more, like, let's get on the
Mhm.
phone. Obviously it's really important for us to have, to report on things as accurately as possible, to get the story from the actual person versus hearsay from,
Right.
we verify everything before we post it. And the timeliness is really important when it seems like we're competing with other types of media. There's been an emergence of like Snacks Shot and some other like newsletters that are
Mhm.
reporting on the industry. And it's important for us to be right out there with them and not late to the party when it comes to something big like Foxtrot closing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Um, hit us with some what not to do's if you're an emerging brand and you've got a big story.
I mean, I guess just I go back to the thing I was saying about like don't be super aggressive with the follow-ups. There's certainly been some people who have, I mean, just haven't really respected the idea that there's other news out there to chase, and not every story is going to be, some things are, I mean, it's to you it's very important, and I
Right.
but it does become part of like a triage of like what are we spending our time on, because there is so much to cover in this industry. So be respectful and mindful about how you follow up on something. And I guess as you pitch, try to find like the news angle of it. If there is something that is particularly newsy about what you're working on, that's important. So I mean, I guess it goes back to what to do versus what not to do. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think you're making a good point there, though, because it's a question of like sometimes clients will call us and be like, we want to spread this news far and wide. And I have to gut check, right? Like, is this really newsworthy? Is this newsworthy information to share? Or is this you just trying to get the word out about something? Because those are two different things.
Yes. Yeah, certainly. I would say another thing, and maybe a what not to do, is to pitch the same angle to like multiple outlets, but promise it as like you're getting the exclusive, and then to turn around and like give another outlet that same. I mean, like it's one thing if it's like we're getting into Whole Foods, like yeah, of course, we're all going to report about that. That's important. But if you're saying like, I don't know, something that's like very unique, like a very specific angle that you're, pitching, and then again, turning around and pitching it to somebody else, but making it seem like you're the one who's getting, I don't know. I would just say, kind of be thoughtful about throwing around terms like exclusivity.
Yeah, right. Yep. That's great advice. In terms of the media kit, what kind of recommendations do you have for folks about what they should include there, other than, of course, the basics of the story, right? What are the facts that they can share? But, are you looking for, how many images are you typically looking for? Obviously they need to be high res, but, your advice on, you had mentioned a media kit was a great thing to send in with a pitch. What's helpful for founders to put in there?
I would say a variety of images that are maybe renders of a product's packaging, as well as lifestyle images in both horizontal and vertical orientations, because you never know like what's going to fit on a website or even a magazine page, because some of these publications still have magazines. Our BevNet vertical has a print magazine. And then also there's, the grid on Instagram or the story on, like just have images that are going to fit different templates.
Yep.
That's important. And I think like, just having all of the facts of like the origin of the company, a timeline is helpful. Who are the players? Who's your team? Who's on your advisory board? What, when did you come to market? What are all the products that you offer? Where are you located? Just like really basic,
Yeah.
and then I think, having part of that origin story of like, what was the impetus behind the launch, or what was the inspiration, and how did you get here? I think adding that personal touch to the story, like we were talking about before with the building in public, is always important.
Yeah. That is still something that we sometimes have to convince clients that we work with, that the origin story is important, right? Like we just had a conversation maybe a month ago with a client who's launching, then they want to go nationwide with their product. I'm trying not to be too specific, but this line of products that they're launching. And we said, it's really beautiful that you can mention that this is all locally sourced product that's like the bulk of what's going in to this line. And they said, what if we're national? People don't care about that. It's not local to them. I said, it's still that's still a key part of your story. It's still who you are, And so I think that to the point about building in public and really relationships that we were talking about in terms of building relationships with reporters and the media in general, it's all about people are seeking that human connection.
Absolutely.
Right. And so the more you can find a way, what's your vehicle to that point of human connection, lean into that.
Absolutely.
Last question for you. Tell me about a high point from your career. One of your that goes down in your, when you're having trouble sleeping, you think, remember that time when?
I had a high point recently. It was last month. I was invited to be a judge on a pitch competition hosted by Snack International, the Snack Food Association.
Yeah.
And I was there. It was a Shark Tank style panel, and Damon John of Shark Tank was also on the panel.
So cool.
I just felt like, and the other judges were big shots, and I just felt like, wow, I don't know how I made it here, but this is quite an honor.
That's awesome. Although I will say, you very much deserved to be there. I mean, your whole career, has led you to this point, right? And you've got this focus in food that who else is a better fit to sit there with them. So congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Monica, thank you so much for taking time for the chat today. Really appreciate not only learning a little bit more about your story, but also the little nuggets of inspiration and advice that you gave today on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Spilled Salt. I'm your host, Maureen Ballatori. Spilled Salt is an Agency 29 production. Agency 29 is a brand-building firm for food, beverage, and agriculture brands. Learn more at agency29.com. For more information about the podcast, visit spilledsaltpodcast.com. Use that website to send me questions or recommendations for future guests. I always love hearing from you. Spilled Salt is available anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.